Can a brisket cooked in a commercial holding oven be better than a brisket smoked Texas style on an offset smoker? That's what we're gonna test out in this video, so let's get smoking. Let's start first with rubbing the control brisket. This is the one I'm going to smoke on my Oklahoma Joe's offset smoker. Like I always smoke my briskets. It's gonna be traditional Texas style. I'm gonna use some salt and pepper rub. Just gonna lay down some water here just so the rub sticks a little bit better. And the reason I got the idea for this experiment is I saw that Ant's Barbecue Cookout, which is another barbecue channel on YouTube, has been experimenting a lot and making a lot of videos on oven briskets. And I actually made a video on an oven brisket a few years ago that is pretty popular. But with Ant's video and all of the renewed interest in oven briskets, it kind of got me thinking, what if I could make a better oven brisket? One that is better than a brisket from an offset smoker. Could my commercial cvap holding oven create a better brisket than both a traditional conventional oven and an offset smoker? Well, we're gonna test it out in this video. Now you might be wondering, how do you get a Texas style brisket that is authentic without smoke in your commercial holding oven or your conventional oven? Well, for my oven brisket video, what I used is some salt and pepper in the rub as well as some charcoal powder. I added about 1/8 of a teaspoon of charcoal powder in this rub. It's the same rub that I used on the control brisket, except that it has 1/8 of a teaspoon of charcoal powder, and I'm going to apply that to the brisket. This charcoal powder is going to help darken up the bark of the brisket, if you can call it that, and it's gonna make it look more like an offset smoker brisket. It might even make it look exactly like an offset smoker brisket. So we got the charcoal powder, and for the smoke flavor issue, I've got some Wright's Liquid Smoke. I'm going to apply this as a binder instead of using water. So we'll give this an ample dose of the liquid smoke on the bottom and the top. And now we'll apply the rub, and you can already see that it's a lot darker than the other rub. That's because the charcoal powder has sort of gotten all over the rub and darkened it up. It's kind of like those commercial rubs, like Sure Shot Sid's has like a darker rub in it. I think it uses charcoal powder. Hardcore Carnivore Black. So it's very common. I've used charcoal powder for years. When I started using it, people were outraged and they thought it was terrible. But now all of these commercial rubs are coming out that have charcoal powder, so I feel kind of vindicated. And there we go. That's what the experimental brisket looks like after it's rubbed. We're gonna let these briskets sweat out on the counter and soak up that rub for about 30 minutes. I'm lighting the smoker with my grill gun. This is a really awesome tool. If you guys wanna pick one up, it's in the description section below. You can click that link and get a discount there. It lights fires in less than 60 seconds and you don't have to mess around with a charcoal chimney or anything like that. It is super handy if you're smoking a lot, especially with a stick burner. And then after about 30 minutes, when I've dialed in the temperature to around 250 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm placing the control brisket onto the smoker, point towards the firebox, flat towards the stack, the cold end of the smoker. I've got a large water pan and I'm boiling water in the firebox. I found in recent experiments that really helps me control temperatures and adds a little bit of humidity to the cook chamber. So I'm continuing with that method. Now for the fun part, this is my Winston cvap cook and hold oven. And unlike a conventional oven, these cvap holding ovens control the temperature in the cook chamber with a combination of water vapor, which comes from the bottom of the unit. There's a water pan down here that creates water vapor heated to a consistent temperature, similar to how a sous vide machine would heat something exactly to 150 degrees. When you put the sous vide stick in the water, it cooks it to 150 exactly. That is what that water pan is doing, and it's filling the cook chamber up with water vapor that is exactly 150 degrees, for example. The second element of heat comes from these heating elements on the side of the Winston cvap that creates hot convective air. So not heat from water vapor, but heat from the heated metal element surface, and that heats the air, and that creates the browning on the meat. So you don't get a soggy piece of meat that's cooked in a 100% relative humidity environment. So in this way, with this device, you can control both humidity and browning or texture and get the crispiness on the meat and that Maillard reaction and the bark that we all love, but you can still retain all that moisture in the meat itself, which is absolutely revolutionary. And that's how these things are designed. They're designed to increase the yield and get the maximum yield of meat possible and losing the least amount of moisture possible. So for the settings, I'm going to set the water temperature. It's called doneness on this version of the cvap cook and hold to 190. It's going to increase the internal temperature of the brisket constantly. There's not going to be any stall because there's not going to be any evaporative cooling. It's going to increase in a steady line until we hit 190, and then it's going to basically stop there. That's not the temperature in this unit though. We're also going to add some browning, so some convective air temperature, and I'm going to add browning level 8, which is an extra 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll click browning level 8, and then with 100 degrees of browning or air temperature, and then 190 degrees of water vapor temperature, that gets us to around 290 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around the temperature I would probably be cooking the brisket at near the end of the cook in order to render the fat cap and get a lot of heat to the top so we get that nice caramelized fat. And that combination of air temperature and water vapor just so happens to fall on Winston's thermoisturization chart in the middle of a crisp cook and a moist cook. So that gives me some confidence that we're gonna get some semi-crispy bark and some browning. It's not gonna be too soggy, but we're also gonna retain a lot of moisture. Now I've set the timer for 6 hours and I've left constant cook and hold off. So what that's gonna do is this CPU inside of here, all of the electronics and the software, is going to automatically determine the perfect temperature curve, and it's gonna control the temperature so that we get the maximum yield out of this brisket while we still get the browning and the bark that we want. In theory anyway, we'll have to see how it works. I think when we get up to around 190 degrees internal in the brisket, I'll go and check on it just to make sure it's probe tender, because I plan on finishing this in a day. I'm not gonna hold it overnight. I'll rest it for 2, maybe 3 hours, and then I'm gonna serve it up and do the taste test. All right, so I put the brisket on a wire rack in a full pan, and I'm gonna just put this in the cvap, just like that. I've got a temperature probe in the brisket just so I can monitor the internal temperature of the brisket. And I'll just leave this air ambient probe just so I can confirm what the ambient temperature is doing in this unit. And that's it. We just shut it and we wait, and the cvap does the rest of the work. Before we check back on the cvap brisket, I want to thank Geology for sponsoring this video. Geology is a 23-time award-winning skin, hair, and body care company recognized in Men's Health, Hypebeast, Esquire, Ask Men Grooming Awards, and more. It creates simple and effective skincare and hair care routines customized just for you with ingredients that are proven to work. Now, I'm exposed to a lot of smoke and grease in my daily working environment, so understandably, I get pimples and acne and my pores get clogged, which is really annoying when I'm on camera for a living. But since using Geology for a few months, I can already see a difference in my skin. I'm getting less acne, my skin's less oily, and the dark circles under my eyes are actually lightening up, which is really awesome. I really like it because I like when things are backed by facts and science, and all of Geology's products are made with scientifically proven ingredients trusted by dermatologists and cosmetic chemists. To get started, you just click the link provided, you take a 30-second diagnostic quiz, and with a few clicks, you tell them all about your skincare goals, and their team of dermatologists will design a personalized skincare routine just for you that is shipped directly to your door. It's really simple. After I did the quiz, they shipped me all the products made with super simple ingredients designed to target just my problem areas, which were pimples, dark circles under my eyes, and sun protection. And then I just followed a reference card that told me exactly what to do. Basically, I wash my face with the face wash in the morning, then I apply the day cream, which has acne fighting and sun protection ingredients. Then at night, I just wash my face again, I apply the under eye cream, and then I apply the night cream, and that's it. It's pretty easy. Now's the time to start your skincare routine, because for a limited time, they're hooking you up with an absolutely insane offer. Use my code SMOKE70 or scan the QR code on the screen, and they will give you an exclusive 70% off their award-winning skincare trial set. On top of that, you can also save 30% on the add-on products of your choice when you add it to your trial. This is one of the best offers you will see, so get it soon before it's gone. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, it's been about 6 or 7 hours, and we're probing at 178, 179 in the point. What do we got in the flat here? A little bit colder, 165. That's fine. I'm gonna take it off now. I'm gonna wrap it. And then I'm gonna put it back on the smoker here. We're just doing a traditional style cook. I'm gonna rest it for 2 hours after it gets to probe tender, nothing fancy, and then we'll compare it to the cvap brisket. Okay, the cvap has finished its 6-hour cycle, and now it is entering the hold phase. It actually drops down to 150 now to hold the brisket at a steady temperature indefinitely until you shut it off. Now, it didn't really do what I expected it to do. It had a pretty high temperature up until around the 3-hour point. So it got around 3 hours of really high convective heat that was as a result of setting it at browning level 8. And then the brains in the CPU of this Winston product, this cvap, thought that it would be a good idea to just switch the browning off, the air temperature off, and just drop it down to, I think, around 200 degrees instead of what it was rocking before, which was 280. And that's because this thing, as I said before, is designed to increase yield and get maximum yield. And that's what the CPU probably rightly thought that it needed to do in order to get the most yield and most water retention and moisture retention from this brisket. So as a result, we got a bit of a slowdown here of the brisket internal temperature until we got to the end of the cycle, the 6-hour cycle, and then it is dropping down now, and it'll drop down to 150 if I let it go. Okay, let's open up this thing and see what we've got. Part of me thinks that we're gonna get kind of a soggy mess because there's a ton of steam in here, but part of me is kind of excited about what we're gonna see. So I'm gonna open it up, I'm gonna probe it, I'm gonna make sure it's done. If it's not done, I'm gonna keep cooking it at a higher temperature until it's probe tender, and then I'll hold it at 150 until it's time for the taste test. So without further ado, let's open this guy up. Okay, so there's the dry bulb thermometer that I was using. That's just to measure the ambient air temperature. And now here's the wet bulb thermometer I was using. It is basically a cotton shoelace wrapped around one of the probes, and it dips down into a tin of water that wicks the moisture up. So this temperature that the probe is taking is always wet, and that produces the wet bulb temperature. So now what I can see actually is that this thing actually ran out of water, which is not good. So that's maybe user error because I didn't fill it up enough, but that's kind of worrisome. Okay, and here is our brisket. It's looking pretty nice. It's looking pretty much the same as when we put it in. It hasn't darkened up or anything. If we touch the bark, it has set up a little bit, so it's not as bad as I thought it would be. But the fat is definitely, actually the fat is pretty well rendered, so let's give it a temp. So it's sitting above 170. It's actually very tender. The flat is a little bit tough, but it is a lot more tender than I thought it would be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna refill this thing with water to the correct fill line. I'm going to cook it for a while at the same temperature that we started with. So I started with 190 water vapor temperature and a browning level of 8, which is an extra 100 degrees of air temperature. I'm gonna let it cook for maybe another hour until I come back and I actually get that probe tenderness, and then we'll let it hold at 150 until it's time for the taste test. All right, guys, both of these briskets are fully rested and they're done. I'm here with my good friend Blair. Blair, say hello to everyone in YouTube land. Blair is a certified Kansas City Barbecue Society judge, just like myself, so he's got the skills to know what good barbecue tastes like, and I know you've tasted your fair share of good barbecue in the past, so. And my brisket. You've tasted a lot of my brisket, so I know that you're gonna be a good judge of this. So, Blair, I just want you to give your honest opinion. That's all I want you to do. Taste the brisket, do the pull test on the slices, tell me which one you like better, what you notice about each one. And then after we're done and you've given your conclusion on which one you like better, then I'll tell you what method I use to cook both of these briskets. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, so let's slice into this one first. I'll just give this guy a slice right down the middle. Okay, so it's slicing pretty nicely. All right, I'll give you guys a look. Nice pink smoke ring. That's a big smoke ring.
Yeah.
Really juicy. I'll give you a look. Looks nice. So the first thing we'll do is, I think we'll do a piece of the flat. So we'll take a slice of the flat. I'm not slathering tallow or anything on it, so it's just gonna be what it is. Now, these briskets are a little bit hot still. I think they're around 160 or 170. Usually I rest them down to like 140. So it's gonna oxidize a little bit. It's going to look kind of dry, but you can be the judge. So there's brisket slice number 1. You don't have to eat the whole thing, but you know, do your test. It's pretty tough. So let me just pull this apart. That pulled apart pretty easily, actually. Okay. You really looked like you were struggling to pull it apart, so I was worried. Was it like super tough when you pulled it apart, or?
Maybe it was just that piece I had.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's get another one here. Okay, let's try to pull this apart. It's not bad. Here, try to pull that apart. You make it look so hard. So it's not the most tender, right? But it's also not super tough.
I ate a lot of your brisket though, so I'm spoiled.
Yeah, okay. This also, like, I would say that my usual briskets are a little bit more tender than this. I did the traditional method with this, like I didn't hold anything overnight or anything like that. So it was just, 2-hour rest. So that could have been part of why it is a little bit more tough. So let's just slice off the burnt ends here. And then I'll give you a point slice. Okay, so there's a slice of the point. I'm gonna taste it too.
I think I just like point pieces better.
Yeah. The point's pretty good on this one. Like if I pull it apart here, pulls apart super easily. The fat is really well rendered. Notice how it's got that kind of yellow layer on the top.
The bark is really nice and crispy too.
I agree.
Really crispy.
Yeah, it's like bacony. And the flat is a little bit under, but the point is just like, so good. So thoughts on brisket number 1?
It's good. At least the point is really tender, and I really like it's super crunchy. I'm sure I don't know if your mic picked it up, but it like crunched in my mouth when I bit it.
And what about the smoke flavor? Did you notice any smoke flavor? Or?
Not overly smoky.
Okay.
But I don't like overly smoky barbecue either.
But you did taste smoke though?
Yeah.
There was, okay. Well, that's good. All right, so let's put this to the side, and otherwise, I mean, like, that's a huge smoke ring.
Yeah.
What does the bark look like compared to this brisket?
Visually, they look pretty similar.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the second brisket.
The first one's maybe a little darker.
The first one's a little bit darker.
Yeah, definitely. This one's more brown. That one's definitely a lot blacker.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, so let's move on to brisket number 2. I'll just cut this the same way. Cut this right here. And I'll give you guys a look. I'll give you a look.
I think it looks juicier.
I agree. I think it looks a little bit juicier than the first slice of the last brisket. So I'll just get the tallow on that guy. And I'll do a slice of the flat here. Okay, so here is a slice of the flat. And I'll let you do your test on that.
I think it's more tender than the first one. Appearance-wise, it doesn't look as nice as the first one. It doesn't have this nice smoke ring, and it doesn't have as nice color. But I think it's more tender. And that bark, I'd like to try a piece of the point, but I don't think the bark is as crispy.
And what do you think about the flavor of the fat cap?
Oh, the fat's like melt in your mouth. Like
it's pretty well rendered. If you look at it, it's really nicely rendered.
Yeah, that fat's like super soft and bubbly.
Like you can just. It's just nothing, right?
Yeah, it's like gelatin. It's almost like it's like really good prime rib fat.
Yeah. So compared to the last, well, let's do the point first.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Okay, so let's get a couple of slices here. So burnt end. So here is a slice of the point. I'll give you that. It's a little tiny bit thicker than the last one, but...
Oh, it's pretty tender. The fat is rendered much nicer on this side.
On the interior fat, like the seam fat?
Yeah. Like there's no chew at all, but it's like buttery fat. Yeah, it's like really melty, delicious.
And that fat, you can see how it's rendered all the way down. It's all yellow. Give you guys a close up here. You can see how the fat is all rendered down on the point.
What grade of brisket is this?
Choice. Costco brisket. So, AAA. Canadian. It's not prime. This isn't a prime brisket. It's not a Wagyu brisket. So, thoughts in general? Let's start with like tenderness first.
This one it's more tender than the first one.
Yeah.
Yes, the fat has a way better texture. It's like a real like buttery melt in your mouth.
And just to confirm, more tender in like that it's more pull apart, or that it has more moisture in it as well.
It's moister. It's a moister brisket. It pulls apart easier, but it's also like it's a moister brisket.
Okay. And what about the taste?
It tastes pretty similar. I like it better, but I think that's just because it has a little bit better mouthfeel because it's a little more tender. So I don't know if it tastes better, if it just the mouthfeel is better.
Either way, it's better because it's more tender and juicy than the other one.
The only thing I liked about the first one better is that beautiful smoke ring and that really crispy bark. That this one just doesn't look as nice. And that's really crispy bark on that one.
Yeah. You can see on the burnt end here, huge smoke ring, and the bark is beautiful. And if you look at this one, I mean, can you see a smoke ring?
No. Not really.
If you look at this one, you can see a little bit of pink.
There's a slight smoke ring, yeah.
A little bit of pink. Like if you look at this slice here.
Yeah. I don't know, but I guess
there's a tiny bit of pink.
But the second one tastes better, and I'm supposed to be like eating it, not looking at it. So.
Yeah. What about the bark and like the smoke flavor? Do you taste any smoke flavor?
Less smoky on this second one.
It's less smoky?
Yeah.
Okay. But do you taste any smoke at all?
Not really.
Not really, eh?
I'm not getting a hard smoke flavor. It's beefy. Mm-hmm. Definitely really beefy.
If someone served this up to you and said it was a Texas-style brisket on an offset smoker, would you think twice about it, or?
No, it's pretty good. They're both really good, Steve. Mm-hmm. Like they're both like pretty top tier brisket.
Okay, so which one did you like better in general then?
I liked the second one.
Okay.
Because I liked the fat is just so gorgeously rendered and buttery.
Yeah.
And it's just that mouthfeel, that really really buttery fat is really, really good.
Yeah.
So this would be my second one. Would be my choice.
Okay.
If it was a beauty contest and you were gonna put a brisket on like a commercial to sell briskets, that's the one I would pick.
Yeah, with the nice big smoke ring, beautiful smoke ring, smoky bark. Can't smell much smoke on this one, but this one is way juicier. Yep. Okay, so the difference in methods. This one that you tasted first was cooked on my offset smoker. I just smoked it for 12 hours and then I rested it for 2 hours, like smoked it up to pro tenderness. I didn't go to like 190 and then hold it for 18 hours like I normally do. This was traditionally cooked up to pro tenderness, held for 2 hours. This one was cooked in an oven. It did not go on a smoker at all. It was cooked in my cvap holding oven. And what I did is I used some charcoal powder in the rub, and I used some curing salt nitrites to give it a little bit of a pink smoke ring. So yeah, this didn't see any smoke at all. Oh, I also put some liquid smoke in it, but I don't think you can really taste it that much.
Come through. The liquid smoke didn't come through.
But yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, maybe I nailed it when I said I thought this fat was almost like really good prime rib fat.
You were 100%.
The way it was so like
when you go if you go to a restaurant, there's almost like an 80% chance that your prime rib will be cooked in a cvap, in a Winston cvap, because they're so good at cooking prime rib. So that's like the quintessential prime rib taste. It's like cooked in a cvap or like Alto Sham holding oven or something like that. So, but I was surprised the fat is really well rendered. But yeah, there you have it. Oven brisket. Who would have thought, right? Like,
that's pretty good. Yeah, it's like, that fat is almost like prime rib.
Yeah. And you've tasted briskets before. Like, you've tasted a lot of briskets before.
Yes.
And if someone served this up to you in a barbecue joint, you know, it might not be the best brisket in the world, but you wouldn't think like, hey, did you smoke this in an oven? You wouldn't even think about it.
Not at all.
So I think it's really interesting that you can get that close to an offset smoker brisket. After trying this brisket and having you as a second opinion, like, I agree, it is very similar to an offset smoker brisket, minus the smoke flavor and the quality of the bark. You don't get much smoke flavor on this, obviously. And to the trained eye, if you look at it, like, it doesn't really look like it's been smoked. Like, there's in between all of the pepper and the salt, it looks like it's been almost dyed black. So if you look really closely to a trained eye, it kind of looks off, but you know, it looks very similar to this brisket, right? Yeah. Like, if you compare that and that, it's almost identical. So Very interesting. If you guys want to get more involved in the Smoke Trails barbecue community, you can join my Patreon. I'll link that in the description section below. You can follow me on Instagram. You can like this video. You can leave a comment below. You can subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in terms of future experiments. If you want to see me do more oven-style briskets or more comparisons like this, what do you want to see me do, Blair?
I think I want to eat more like this.
You want to eat more like that? Okay. Well, we can get a couple beers and then we'll have some more of this brisket because I'm going to dive into it. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and happy smoking.